Communication in any relationship, it's challenging. Try to have a relationship with a faceless multinational car manufacturer, one that's 6,000 miles away, near impossible, which is why I invented the wish list, which was our way of sharing some feedback to car manufacturers that want to listen, not expecting a response. So color me surprised when a car company called me and said, hey, we took a look at your list, made some tweaks, let me know what you think. So what the hell am I exactly talking about? Well, you may remember, last year and a half ago, we drove many different flavors of the then all-new Genesis G80. And for the most part, you and I, we liked it a lot. The only feedback was it was kind of too soft. And believe it or not, someone at Genesis took that seriously, and they created this, which is the Genesis G80 Sport. Now, what exactly is a Genesis G80 Sport? Well, it replaces last year's V6 model. So the Genesis G80 Sport is only on offer as the 3.5 twin-turbo V6, 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque. That is not a change from last year, it's just the way it's packaged. And speaking of packaging, only on offer with the 8-speed torque converter automatic. Then the most important part of the packaging, only on offer as all-wheel drive. Now, we get into some changes here, and this is where we focus on, well, it was a bit too Goldilocks, where you and I, we prefer something a bit stiffer. And believe it or not, they address the front and rear suspensions. In the front, 4% stiffer, in the rear, 12% stiffer, and it still retains the adjustable dampers. Then there's the reality of this being a car that people will daily. So fuel economy. Did I mention it's a twin-turbo V6? 17, 26, 20 combined. Welcome to California's stunning Central Coast, specifically Paso, Robles. Now, for wine aficionados outside of California, they may know Napa, Sonoma a bit better than Paso Robles, but Paso Robles is still magnificent. Why? Because of the roads. The car, 4,508 pounds, or depending how you express your weights and measures, 2,044 kilograms. Now, how does that stack up against the last time we drove a V6 G80? 11 pounds more. With that. Oh, it's about as quick. But the feeling, the way it delivers power, at least the sound, very different. There's a couple of things going on here. Number one, and probably the biggest, would be the transmission logic. What they've done is they've adapted it from the GV70 and the G70. It feels like there's more of a sense of urgency, like there's a more immediacy to it, but more importantly, it holds the gears longer. Now that's both in auto mode like we are in right now, or if I switch the gears myself, it won't automatically upshift. Basically, it'll bounce off the red line, and once I go back to drive here, and it goes back to the transmission logic provided by the engineers. Now, this is the same engine, same tune of the output, both horsepower and torque, and I don't believe there's a change in the exhaust, but it sounds different. And two things are going on here. Number one, there is that change in the transmission logic which winds the gears out, so it sounds a bit different, but then they pilfer something from the GV80. They can actively cancel the noise in the GV80. That system, it's designed to keep the noise out of a luxury, like mid-size SUV, and make it more tranquil. Here, I believe they're working in conjunction with the transmission logic to make it sound more aggressive, which changes the overall personality of the car, especially in the revised sport mode. Now, as we press on, I need to provide a bit of full disclosure. When the folks at Genesis reached out to Kumo and said, hey, you should come drive the new G80 Sport, we weren't that excited because on paper it didn't seem like a huge difference. When you get behind the wheel, even in town, you immediately notice a characteristic change. The personality is totally different. And this is beyond the transmission logic. This is more about the driving dynamics. Even in the comfort mode, there is a difference in the ride quality. It is significantly stiffer, more so than other Genesis. Now, if we're honest, a Genesis has been closer to a Lexus, an ES at that, than say a BMW M5. This is closer to a BMW M550, not quite there, but definitely far away from a Lexus. And kind of a recap, it's multi-link in the front, multi-link in the rear. The brakes are the same as well, 14.2 in the front and 13.6 in the rear. But this Sport, like the previous V6, it gets the monoblock calipers, which change the braking, and there's plenty of stopping power with this amount of horsepower. But most importantly, one of the biggest changes here is the rear wheel steering. And there in town, when you're trying to maneuver around parking lots or make a U-turn in the street, noticeable difference. I would argue it's more than the 2% that Genesis claims. In terms of the opposite, high-speed stability, you definitely notice a difference from the previous G80, but it's not to the level of other four-wheel steer systems. Now the ride quality, another reason why it changes the wheels. This one we're driving is fitted with summer tires and 20-inch wheels. Previously, 20-inch wheels were only reserved for the GV80. Now this can be had with 19s or 20s in this fancy Prestige. So it does make the ride a bit more harsh. I personally prefer it. Like, this is kind of what I've been asking for in terms of ride quality and overall driving dynamics since the car came out. And then rounding out what I would call all of these finite finishing school changes, they've pilfered something else from the GV80, and that is the electronic limited slip differential. Now there, it's more for inclement weather. Here, it's for traction. There's two things going on. Number one, you really don't notice a huge difference here like you would, say, in the BMW version, where there's an electronic limited slip, and you really notice the difference in terms of acceleration, especially going around corners. However, there is something going on with this all-wheel drive system. Now, one could say, oh my God, why can't we have a rear-wheel drive with the V6 and the Sport? And I would say that. This system, in the Sport Plus mode, especially with a launch control system, which they've layered onto this as well, it can send all of the torque to the rear wheels. Is it noticeable? I can't honestly say you notice the difference. It's not like an E63 or an M5 where you can go in and find a switch in the menu and switch off the torque to the front wheels, but there isn't an instance where you feel in the steering the torque where the wheels are trying to fight to go that way or that way. And while we're on the topic of the steering, that's another big difference here. Again, you notice right from the minute you get in the car, there's something different here. And you know what, putting it all together, going past all of these changes, it's not all of these small changes, it's more than the sum of its parts. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, one of our favorite Genesis products. Hell, if we're being honest, that is one of our favorite Hyundai Kia Group products. This one is the 2022 Genesis G80 Sport. Now, if this were a basic G80 Sport, it would be $63,450. Now, further, for the avoidance of doubt, if this were a basic G80, meaning a 2.54, it'd be 48 grand as base price. This one brings about, in addition to the sport bits we have discussed, as well as the V6, a panoramic roof, leather and vented seats, as well as metal pedals. That is wunderbar. However, this is the most forward one can have. This is the Prestige, base price $70,250. What does that mean? Well, 20-inch wheels, Napa leather, kind of like a faux suede headliner, the 3D gauges, which I don't love. I like the other basic gauges better than this. Can we have that in this vehicle? And then, of course, the head-up display. Now, that one technically is the most expensive one because it has these summer tires and something we just talked about, that active noise cancellation kind of stuff, whatever that is. Then there's the paint on this one. You know I'm a big fan of the burgundy on these cars, especially with the tan. That is an additional $500. This is kind of like the old Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing. If you were not aware, the Gullwing came with silver. You could have any color you want as long as it's silver for free. If you wanted black, or like the blue one we drove, or a green one, that cost you extra money. This is the same deal. The only free color is white, and it is horrible. If you want a metallic color, it's an additional $500. If you want a very cool matte finish, that's an additional $1,500. $1,500. Then the only other thing we have to add is the destination handling from Ulsan, Korea for $1,045 for a total retail price of the most murdered out Genesis G80, $71,795. So it is indeed high time that you and I address the elephant in the room, which has been staring you in the face throughout this entire episode. And to understand it, we need to go back to our previous GV80 and G80 episodes over the past year and a half, 2 years. Basically, you, me, and Kumo, we all bitched and moaned about the horrific design of the steering wheel, which looked like it was copied from a 1995 Ford LTD Crown Vic. Well, apparently they've been listening, they changed the wheel. Can I say thank you very much? But this came along with a number of other small changes. Outside, it's a bit more aggressive air dam. They've changed the rear apron a bit. The wheels, the design has changed. It looks a little bit closer to the GV70. They've changed the trim. So instead of chrome, it's more like a dark chrome. I don't know if I like that. I don't like that. I would like a satin finish. And then the interior, a couple things going on here. Number one, notice the pattern on the seats and remember the pattern that came before it in the previous year of this car. It had the quilting that looked like it came from a Bentley. Well, this change in the way it looks is kind of the direction Bentley went maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So you can kind of see where they're getting inspiration. They say there's more bolstering. You know what? With all the changes to the suspension, can we have a bit more bolstering? Maybe different seats in the Sport than in the basic 4-cylinder car? And then something that stands out. I personally like the satin finish wood in the previous year of this car. However, the Sport now is only on offer with aluminum trim on the dash, which looks magnificent, or this carbon fiber. Let's visualize this in a bit of a different light. Have you ever seen a gray herringbone suit? Not dark, more of a lighter gray from, say, a Brioni or a Xenia, where it's a really bold herringbone pattern, something that stands out. That's what's going on here. It's more of like a checkerboard pattern rather than just a carbon fiber weave. It's not quite to the level of, say, a houndstooth or what Porsche calls Pepita. This, it works very well in conjunction with the overall design theme that Genesis set with this thing last year. Me, I still want the satin finish wood, but this, it works unusually well. So I would think, based on what we experienced today, that all of these small changes make this a very good thing. So really what we need to do now is reflect on what this means. And I had the, 27-minute flight from San Luis Obispo back to LAX. Yes, I did fly. And this is what I came up with. Last year, when Genesis introduced both the GV80 and the G80, they went from, oh, Hyundai's trying to do the Lexus thing, isn't that cute, to, oh my God, Hyundai really is doing the Lexus thing and they're getting good at it. Well, now it's coming full circle where you got to take them very seriously. And this is where we get to the wish list. And they took our wish list last year and they literally gave us everything we wanted. So I kind of feel like a glutton asking for more, but here's what I got. Can we have the shifter from this one? Because it's a shifter. I hate the rotary shifters, I hate the push button shifters, and this is a Ford thing, I just don't like these. Can we at least in the Sport models have a real shifter, kind of like AMG does with their full fat models? And then here, I'm really asking for a lot. The suspension tuning that we did with this G80 Sport, how about offering it at least as a package on the 2.54? Because as we learned in previous G80 4-cylinder episodes, that is absolutely the sweet spot when it comes to the G80 in terms of value and luxury kind of Sport Venn diagram stuff. Anyway, this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I once again humbly request your help with the algorithm. Not because I want to, it's because YouTube with this stupid algorithm, I've been doing this 12 years and I still have to ask you this stuff because a very small percentage of you hit like and subscribe. Like it's 5% subscribe and like 2% actually hit like. So can we get those numbers up? That's basically what I'm asking for here. Anyway, till I see you in the next episode. Bish, bye.